We begin in the year 1946, where a family consisting of a father, mother, and daughter is sleeping peacefully in their seaside home. At the stroke of midnight, the father wakes up and heads to the water tank located in their backyard in the midst of a severe storm. As he descends, he is suddenly attacked by something that pulls him down, causing him to scream in excruciating pain. Despite his efforts to escape the tank, the creature drags him inside, resulting in his death. The scene then shifts to the year 1978 in Oakland, California, introducing us to a man named Ben along with his wife Julia and their 10-year-old daughter Rhea. They run a pet store selling a variety of animals. Moments later, while they were preparing to close the store, an elderly lawyer named Amos Tilbury enters and brings some shocking news. Tilbury informs them about a property belonging to Ben's mother in Hobbits Bay, Oregon. Here, it is revealed that Ben is none other than the son of the man we saw at the beginning. Furthermore, Tilbury reveals that Ben's father and sister did not die in a car accident as Ben believed but mysteriously disappeared around the beach house in Oregon. For this reason, Ben never got to know them, as he was born only a few months later. The lawyer also hands Ben a key to the beach house and provides its location. Ben and Julia are surprised by all these revelations, but they decide to visit the inherited property. The next morning, the family packs their bags and heads to Oregon. Following a map, they leave the road and go through the forest only to discover a huge fallen tree blocking the path. As a result, they continue the rest of the journey on foot. After a short walk, they finally reach the abandoned house, which is now completely covered with plants. They unlock the door and enter the dusty interior, which still seems usable. Shortly after, the family goes to the backyard, where they are greeted by the beautiful view of the bay. They also find the water tank, and Ben explains that this type of tank was used to collect rainwater. He then proceeds to investigate the interior and discovers that it is more like a cave. However, he finds nothing but a lantern that his father had used years ago. Later, the family begins cleaning the house as best they can. They also bring some camping equipment from the car, indicating that they decided to stay in the house for a few days. Later that night, the couple examines some photographs and documents they found while cleaning the house. Many of them include newspaper clippings related to the mysterious disappearance of Ben's father and sister. Additionally, they also find Ben's mother's diary, in which she describes the stormy night when Ben's father disappeared and the subsequent disappearance of his sister 5 days later. On the same night, Rhea is trying to sleep in her room when she hears a strange noise coming from outside. Shortly after, she observes some movement under her bed, which scares her. Because of this, she runs to her parents' room and informs them that something is trying to get in. Ben and Julia then begin checking the whole house separately, and during her search, Julia also hears sinister sounds. The sound leads her to the backyard, but she finds nothing there. She then turns around, startled by Ben's sudden appearance. Believing the sound was nothing, they return to the bedroom and fall asleep. The next morning, Julia wakes up to see her husband trying to fix the damaged parts of the house, including the generator. A little later, Ben goes down to the water tank and inspects the pipes. He then adjusts the valve and confirms that it is working. Before leaving the tank, Ben is surprised to see a peculiar creature lying on the ground. He takes it inside the house and shows it to his wife. Despite her experience as an animal specialist, Julia cannot identify the creature, never having seen such a species in her life. After a brief examination, she speculates that it might be an amphibian larva and suggests they take it home for further study. Meanwhile, Rhea is playing with her dog in the backyard when her attention is drawn to the water tank. Looking inside, she is horrified to see a large creature moving inside it, causing her to scream. Ben and Julia run to her side, but as before, they find nothing inside the tank. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of a woman named Muriel Tingy, who is a local real estate agent sent by Tilbury. She offers her assistance in selling the property, explaining that she already has a potential buyer eager to finalize the purchase. The transaction is promptly proposed, and the couple is surprised by the suggested sale price, which is much higher than they expected. Although they are pleased with the offer, they decide to take some time before making a final decision. Given their lack of knowledge about the area, they ask Tingy about the property's history. In response, she shares that the land has been the subject of rumors about being cursed. According to her, locals in the region believe that a devastating tsunami hit the area several centuries ago, leading to the belief that the land is cursed. When the conversation ends, it is already dark, so Tingy returns to her car to leave. However, her vehicle gets stuck in the mud, leading her to get out to investigate. At this moment, she is attacked by a mysterious creature and dragged into the forest. Her screams are heard by Julia, who comes downstairs to check. She is frightened to see a dark figure outside the kitchen window, and the scare makes her scream. Ben runs down and reassures her, then quickly checks the window but finds nothing. Julia desperately wants to leave the place, but Ben reassures her, saying that he will contact Tingy the next day. The following morning, Ben discovers that the tap water is completely dirty and, as a result, goes down to the water tank to investigate the problem. There, he discovers that a piece of cloth is clogging one of the pipes and also finds a dead raccoon floating in the water. He removes the carcass and shows it to his wife, convincing her that the creature their daughter saw the night before was probably the raccoon. Later, Ben decides to visit a nearby gas station to refuel the car. While driving through the forest, he comes across Tingy's abandoned car. Curious, he begins to search the area for clues and spots bloodstains on the ground. Following the trail, he shockingly discovers Tingy's mutilated body. Terrified, he runs back to the car and immediately contacts the police for help. Back at the beach house, Julia notices that the water tank hatch has been left open. She goes downstairs and notices water spilled in several spots on the floor. She then picks up a key and enters an adjacent room, where she discovers another diary in Ben's mother's handwriting. In the pages, Julia finds an account of the horrific experiences Ben's mother suffered in the house and the reason she kept the truth hidden. It turns out there are several terrifying creatures residing inside the water tank. They were the ones that killed Ben's father and sister. When his mother discovered this, she immediately packed up and left the house. As Julia continues reading the diary, she hears footsteps outside. Worried about her daughter, she decides to check, but the door seems to have been locked from the outside. As a result, Julia quickly breaks a window and runs upstairs to Rhea. Meanwhile, Ben runs back to his family and is relieved to find them safe. They share their respective discoveries. Ben reveals about Tingy's lifeless body, while Julia discloses the diary's contents. She pleads for them to leave the place immediately, but Ben tries to convince her to stay, assuring her that the police are on the way and they will be fine, no matter what is out there. While Julia packs their bags, he decides to venture back into the forest for unknown reasons. Soon, a police officer arrives at the scene and stops beside Tingy's car. He then proceeds to conduct a search of the area but finds nothing amiss. As a result, he returns to the vehicle, and it is at this moment that he feels a presence behind him. It is a giant, viscous reptilian creature with long, sharp teeth. Before the officer can react with a shot, the creature attacks and drags him into the forest. Ben ends up witnessing this horrifying scene from a distance and rushes back to his family. He tells his wife what happened and emphasizes that they have to somehow survive the night because the creatures only appear in the dark. Ben tells Julia that he will create an improvised bomb using the remaining gasoline and kerosene. With this, he aims to destroy the creature's nest inside the water tank. Julia tries to dissuade him, citing the extreme risk involved, but Ben insists it is the only way for them to survive. He instructs his family to take cover in a room while he gathers the necessary materials before descending into the water tank. Upon entering the cave-like structure, he lights the improvised bomb and runs to exit. However, the bomb detonates much more quickly than he anticipated, without causing a significant effect. Instead, the sound of the bomb alerts the creatures, who launch an attack against him. Ben then engages in a desperate fight against the creatures and somehow manages to get out of the tank but is gravely injured in the process. Meanwhile, Julia and Rhea hear a loud knock on the door. Julia cautiously opens the door and, to her relief, finds it is their dog, Archie. Shortly afterward, there is another knock on the door, this time with more force. Julia realizes it is the creature, so she tries to block the door with a cabinet. However, another creature invades the room through the window and drags her daughter outside to the water tank. Seeing this, Julia rushes downstairs to save her daughter while noticing Ben is gravely wounded on the ground. As he laments everything, Julia takes him inside, seeing that he is in no condition to fight anymore. Julia then decides to act and rescue her daughter from the creature's clutches. Being an animal specialist, she understands that chemicals and fire can ward off such creatures because the light and heat drive them away. With this knowledge in mind, she covers herself with chemicals, creates an improvised torch using gasoline, and grabs a garden fork before entering the water tank. Upon entering the place, she pours chemicals into the water to repel the monsters. At a certain point, Julia is attacked by one of the creatures, which drags her underwater. However, she bravely fights the creature and even manages to kill it by driving the garden fork into it. Venturing deeper, Julia finds her daughter, who is fortunately unharmed. At this moment, she notices several other creatures returning to the nest, prompting her to use fire as her weapon. This scares them momentarily, and seizing the opportunity, Julia instructs her daughter to head toward the exit. Soon after, she runs out of gasoline, leaving her with no alternative but to escape. After a while, the mother and daughter manage to get out of the water tank, and Julia closes the lid before the creature can emerge. Julia then takes her daughter and the dog to the police car, where she finds a gun in the glove compartment. Wasting no time, she returns to fetch Ben. Julia uses all her strength to carry her husband to the car. However, the situation intensifies when they spot one of the horrendous creatures on the car's roof. In this crucial moment, Julia fires a fatal shot that penetrates the creature's brain, and then they drive off. With all this struggle, the family finally manages to escape the place. Once they reach a safe distance, Julia pulls over and takes a moment to regain her composure. The film ends with the family safe, moving as far away from the location as possible, and heading back to the city.